Welcome, Michael Arenal, to the BoardRoom podcast. Of course, Michael, you have a brand, a board label, Arenal Surfboards from Ventura. And by the way, I could be messing up quite a bit. Please step in if I butcher this at all. But I'll start by saying that a couple of years ago, you won Best in Show, the board build-off at the BoardRoom show. I met you there briefly. You're building beautiful surfboards. I believe you're affiliated with Hobie in some way, and I know you have your own label. You've been selected by Bing Copeland to compete in the Icons of Foam Shape-Off, honoring Bing in October at the BoardRoom show. You got lots going on, Michael. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Yeah, thanks so much, Scott. Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You recently returned from Portugal, right? You had a shaping trip. Tell me a little bit about that. That looks interesting.
Yeah. I just got back from Portugal about 2 weeks ago and went over there and worked out of a shop with the Wave Gliders crew in Ericeira. And yeah, I went over initially in the first time in 2019 to shape for Trimcraft, Ryan Lovelace's label. And then kind of put a pause on during COVID, just with traveling and everything. And then went back again last year for my own label, and then again this year. So just kind of keeping it going. It's been super fun.
And how many boards do you build when you go over there? What's your workload like?
They generally shoot for around 15. So yeah, it's pretty mellow right now. They're just kind of not too little, not too much. Just try to keep it going in that sense.
Yeah. And does 15 boards, obviously it pays the bills, right, to get over there and all that?
Yeah, it's definitely it makes it worth it for sure. I basically just have to pay my way at my flight, and then they kind of handle housing and all that stuff, transportation. So yeah, it works out good. And it's all when I'm over there, it's all hand shaping. So it's a good amount of work. Do
you bring your tools? Do you bring all your own gear?
Yeah. I just throw it all in a suitcase and just hope for the best that it makes it.
Yeah. Do you ever have any problems with immigration, getting your tools across the border?
No, thankfully. I've always kind of wondered about that, but it's never been an issue. I've never heard of it being an issue for anyone else. So yeah, hopefully it keeps going that way.
I know Tomo and those guys from Australia, when they come over, they run into some issues. So every country's different.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about surfing over there? The surf looks great. I've been there. It reminds me a lot of Southern California in like 1940.
Yeah. It's definitely very similar to California, the way the landscape and the is and everything, and just kind of the way the cliffs are. Like part of it reminds me of Northern California, and then others like a little bit more like San Diego with the reefs and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is very similar in a sense. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And when you go over there, are you sort of geeked out on surfing? Are you fired up on surfing, or are you like, okay, I'm going over there to work, and if I get a few waves, so be it?
Yeah, it's kind of more that way. I feel like it's usually the amount of time I have when I'm over there. It's like I'm pretty focused on getting the work done, and then try to have a day or two to focus on surfing. This last time, unfortunately, I didn't even surf at all because it was just really windy the whole time, and then just kind of wind slop. But and then of course the day I left, I get a text from Nico, and it's like glassy and nice and perfect. So how it goes.
Murphy's Law.
Yeah, totally.
Tell me a little bit about Ericeira. As I mentioned, I've been there, but I don't know if our listeners know the region very well. Where is it relative to Lisbon or Lisboa?
Yeah. So it's about a 45 minute drive north of Lisbon. Yeah, so it's pretty close. It's definitely easy to jump to if you're in Lisbon already. You can even take a taxi there if you really wanted to. So
yeah. And the town itself, Ericeira, like if you were to, it's obviously it's really difficult to compare old European towns anywhere in California, but size-wise, Ericeira, is it like Ventura, or is it like Santa Cruz, or like how is it? How does it feel like? Is there anything that
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it's so different, and just the way it's laid out with the way the buildings are and everything. Yeah, I would almost say, hmm, definitely not like Santa Cruz. I'd say smaller than, yeah, maybe more closer to like a Ventura. Definitely smaller than Santa Barbara. You know, it's pretty tight because it's also just kind of on a hill, so everything kind of feeds down into the ocean. So the main kind of like center of town, it's relatively pretty small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You imagine it must be probably an old fishing village, right?
Yeah, yeah. As far as I know, that's how it was. Yeah, that's how it was established.
Yeah. And did you get into like, so when I was there, I remember being blown away by the buildings and how old they were. And specifically,
Yeah.
the restaurant I went into, the door was like 12 feet wide and 6 feet tall and weighed about 700 pounds. Is there parts of the culture there that just excite you or that just kind of blew you away?
Yeah, totally. It is pretty cool to, I mean, go to a place where there's all these buildings that are hundreds, sometimes like close to 1,000 years old, and still functioning, and people are living in them and all that stuff. So it's totally different, you know, compared to especially California. But
Yeah.
it's definitely pretty cool. And then I mean, I got a whole like history lesson. I was over there from Nico at Wave Gliders, and it's pretty incredible to be like in a place like that that has so much history and culture for a long time. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
it really is awesome. Are
Yeah,
you a history
yeah.
guy? Is history interest you?
You know, as like more and more. When I
Yeah.
was a kid, I hated history,
Yeah.
but as I get older, yeah, you know, I mean, I think as you start traveling and stuff, it's just inevitable. Things become interesting, and you want to learn about it. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. When did you go to Portugal?
I went to Portugal in let's see, it was 92. I was
Oh, okay.
sailing on a sailboat. I was working on a sailboat, and that was
Oh,
one of the
wow.
stops was Lisbon. Yeah, it was fascinating. And I want to go back. Like I said, it from a surfing, you know, from a selfish surfing standpoint,
Yeah,
I know that the dollar, the exchange rate is pretty good, especially relative to
yeah,
everything about it is really neat, you know, like and
totally.
in a weird way, this would never happen, but, and you probably can't relate to this because you're much younger, but I look at it like that would be a cool place to retire, Portugal. You know what I mean?
Uh,
But yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so
Um,
you must have traveled the world on that boat then. It sounds like you kind of went around a bit.
yeah, we started in England and we sailed up to the Amsterdam area and we went back down through the English Channel into the Bay of Biscay and went to some various places. We stopped in France and in Lisbon
Wow.
and Cape Verde and the Canaries, and then crossed the Atlantic to
Mm.
Barbados. Yeah,
No way.
yeah, it was quite a
Yeah,
treat.
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was good stuff for sure. It was fun. Um, Thanks for taking an interest in me. That's kind of you, but this is
Oh
about
yeah, yeah. I know. I do. Yeah, I wish I could. I want to learn more about you because I feel like whenever I see you, it's a BoardRoom show and you're running around because you're busy, and it's like never get a chance to talk to you. So it's cool.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And do I do run around like a freak, and I probably shouldn't. I don't really need to. I just feel like I need to look busy for some reason. But you mentioned Trimcraft and going over there. Was I guess I'm interested in sort of your foundation. Like, how did you
Yeah.
get into shaping? Where did that start? Where did that incubate?
Yeah. Initially, I mean, I started in I guess my junior year of high school. I was just with a buddy. Just we're like, let's just try to do this. Let's grab some blanks, and it was during the time when Elias were kind of becoming popular, and that was pretty approachable. You know, just got to shape a piece of wood, a
Hmm.
flat piece of wood. So did a couple of those, and then at a point, like, oh, let's try to make a real surfboard, and then so got some foam and did it, and then kind of just kept doing it, and it kept enjoying it. And then I don't know, along the way, I was working at the Hobie shop at that time as well,
Where in
and
Dana?
then and Dana Point, yeah, right, the Dana Point shop, and then through being there, just meeting people, being around there, and then yeah, slowly got opportunities to to shape and just kind of work with people, and basically through the Hobie guys.
Yeah.
Like initially met Gary Larson and then Tyler Warren, and then started to get jobs in a couple glass shops for a brief amount of time, first at Waterman's Guild and then at Wes Holderman's shop in Oceanside. And those are pretty short stints. And then I kind of just, for whatever reason, I kept getting jobs shaping, kind of thankfully and luckily.
Yeah.
And then it was with the Kookbox guys, Drew out in New York. And then slowly with Hobie. And then, yeah, so it's just kind of a long journey that very fortunately I just kind of kept finding my way into shaping jobs, you know. Yeah.
And who of those guys that you mentioned, or maybe you haven't mentioned them, but who was really influential and who was real positive and real like, hey, you're doing a great job, you know, like who was supportive of you from a mentor standpoint?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, I feel like pretty much, man, everyone I really ran to, I feel pretty lucky in that regard, because I've heard kind of bad stories of other people where they really got shut out by people. They'd be like, no, like go, you know, they don't want to teach them or whatever. But initially, the first person I met in the industry was Donald Brink. And he was, I mean, looking back now, how gracious he was and how much he shared with me, I'm like, oh, that's he took so much time. You know, I would just come hang out and bug him, and he would stop and just like talk to me and like hang out and take the time. And yeah, looking back now, I'm like, it blows my mind. You know, he's such a kind person, and he's a legend.
Yeah, he's very
yeah. So definitely very thankful to Donnie for all the time and everything he's shown me.
Yeah, he really pays it forward. Anybody else? Like in the back of my head, I'm like, Mickey Munoz. Did Mickey stop by and help you?
Yeah, you know, I never really spent any time with Mickey. I met him a couple of times, but nothing. You know, very briefly. Yeah, there was one point when I was at hanging out at Donnie's shop, and Terry Martin stopped by, and I remember being like, "Oh, it's Terry Martin." And then it was like my first board. I was showing Donnie, and he just happened to be there. And then, you know, it was like so kind of like, this is great, you know, and it's just like my first board. He's like being so positive about it. I'm like, so which is pretty cool. I mean, to have someone like Terry come up and talk about your first board and be excited about it. I feel like that was probably pretty hugely influential, because if he came up and was like, you know, whatever, I probably would have been like, oh, geez, I don't know, you know. So yeah, I think I definitely got a lot of positivity in the beginning, which is I'm super thankful for.
That is so cool, man. That is so great. And Terry's such a great, and still is. I mean, he's still with us in some regard. That's so cool. A quick story. Terry was in the very first shape off. And
oh, really?
Yeah. And we were replicating a Mike Diffendorfer. We were honoring Mike Diffendorfer. And the board that we were replicating had a twist in it. And Terry's the only guy that shaped the twist into the final product. That's how great that guy is. That's amazing. Yeah, he was a great guy. And I imagine, so you grew up in the Dana Point area and you started surfing in that Orange County area, is that correct?
Yeah, I was always just like a town in from basically Dana Point and like San Juan and then Mission Viejo, so kind of in that area. Yeah, so pretty much grew up like surfing Creek, and pretty much you go down to Sano and Trestle and Church a lot. Yeah.
And were you riding like what year were you working at Dana when you were just getting started? Like how old were you?
Yeah, I was probably when I was like just out of high school, so about 19 to 21, 22, somewhere in there. Yeah, about 2 or 3 years.
And it seems like you mentioned Creek, and I'm thinking to myself, well, were you riding a shortboard? Were you riding like a 6'1" tri-fin that was all bladey and stuff?
Yeah, it's definitely kind of all over the place. I mean, sometimes I'd ride thrusters, but most of the time I was riding like, you know, fish and other just kind of alternative craft.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so San Onofre, did that have a big influence on your shaping, or is there a surf spot that has an influence on your shaping?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I would say Santa does for sure. Is at that time, um, yeah, I was kind of, man, I don't even know where to put it, but if you call maybe the beginning of the 2000s, kind of like the resurgence of longboarding and nose riding, the way it's become now.
Yeah.
Um, a few years have been into that. So at that time, I felt like it was pretty ripe and a lot of really good longboarders down at Sano. So yeah, it was definitely influential on that part, seeing what people were riding and
Yeah.
the things they were doing on the craft. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And how did you get up to Ventura and hanging out? I mean, I imagine the trim craft.
Mm. Yeah, that's funny. That actually happened kind of after I moved up. But initially, it was just my wife now, Michaela. She went to school up here um, at Cal State Channel Islands, and once she graduated, she was like, "Kind of just want to stay here." And I was like, "Yeah, that's. I think I kind of want to get out of here." And like, I really like Ventura and coming up here and visiting her. And it was cool. So we just eventually just moved up here, and yeah, it's been home ever since. That was about 6.5 years ago.
Yeah. And where do you do most of your surfing up there?
Man, a lot. I mean, kind of all over, up and down, but mainly C Street. C Street's the closest to where we live. It's like a mile away,
Yeah.
so I can bike there and everything. But yeah, depending on the season, and everything, we go down to Oxnard or obviously Recon or kind of areas in between. And
Yeah. Yeah, I get
yeah.
it. Enough said. Okay. Um, that Ventura is kind of a rough and tumble town. I mean, in some ways, it feels like it's it has its moments of kind of saltiness.
Yeah, I mean, it's man. Here's stories about the past, like kind of
Yeah.
through the '70s and '80s. I mean, no, it's definitely way gnarlier years ago. Now, I mean, it's a lot. It's changed a lot for sure.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because as it's definitely still has that feel to a degree. And like more recently, it's like I'm seeing like so many Hell's Angels riding
Yeah.
around, like more than ever before. So it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing. And again, I'm not a Hell's Angels history guy. I don't really know, but I know I'm pretty sure that at some point in the 70s, like the head Hell's Angels guy lived in Ventura.
Yeah.
Don't hold me to it. I could be wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's got a little biker vibe, which is fine. More power. In a weird way, it's
Yeah.
kind of cool. Like it's like there's so many coastal towns in California that have gentrified, they've all turned into yoga studios with acai bowls next to them. So it's kind of cool to have
Yeah.
a little bit of salty kind of Wild West
Yeah.
vibe floating.
Totally. And it's interesting because that's definitely happening more and more in Ventura. But I think sometimes people come up because they know that that's up there, and then they're there, and then they realize it is still kind of raw a little bit, and it kind of throws them off. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a good balance for sure.
So what's the number of years now that you've been shaping?
So I started when I was 17. I'm 30 now. So I guess you can call it 13 years, but probably more recently, like 9 years actually working in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you got started at, like you mentioned a couple of glass shops, were you primarily shaping or were you also doing other stuff? Were you laminating or sanding or did you just move right into a shaping bay?
Yeah. So I took some boards to Waterman's Guild. And I remember like I just dropped some boards off and I was all nervous and I just kind of left. And then I got a call from Greg Martz or a text or something. He was like, "Hey," he's like, "Come over here. I want to meet you. Like, what the heck is this? You just bring boards to my shop and don't say hi?" Like, so yeah, I came back and yeah, Greg he's such a great guy. He's very kind, and I mean, he's I guess he can come off a little rough, but it's all love. Yeah, Greg's amazing, and but I ended up started working there for a brief amount of time. And at that point, I was just like quality control, just QCing boards.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then shortly after I got a job hot coating and finning at West Fullerman's. So I went down there. And then there was, and then I ended up stopping working at the glass shops because I was having some health issues.
Mm-hmm.
And basically my doctor was like, you got to like get away from the resin. It's just not going to help the situation right now.
Mm-hmm.
So then I left the glass shop thing and then kept shaping. And then I just fortunately had enough work shaping. So I just kind of kept on doing that.
Yeah. And as you look back on your time in the glass, in the glass shop, do you think it was, do you think it was important that you spend some time QCing boards and laminating, like doing other stuff besides shaping? Do you think that there was maybe something that you maybe, I don't know, give me your thoughts on that. Is that important?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I think if you're going to build boards and make boards or work in the industry, I think it's for sure important to see all the realms of that and realize how hard the guys in glass shops work. You know, I mean, to see like they're just in there every day, breathing those fumes, you know, doing it because they love it. So for sure, I think it's such an important part of the process, obviously. So if you don't really have an idea of what goes on, then I don't think you're really ever going to fully appreciate it and understand it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then of course, I mean, you know, like glassing is also such important design of the board itself when it comes to laminating and sanding and all that stuff. So
yeah,
it's all packaged.
Sure. And have you given any thought to, it looks like your boards are mostly just PUs with standard 6-ounce cloths laminated, probably by hand. Have you given any thought to some of the other tech that's out there, like, you know, vacuum bagging, carbon, stuff like that, or even other foams? Are you using other foams?
Yeah, that's a good question. Definitely, I think about it a lot. I do typically it's generally just, you know, polyurethane, polyester resin. Luckily, yeah, the guy like Varial is up here in Ventura, which is pretty fortunate. It's kind of cool that it's so close. And yeah, so I've definitely messed with it a little bit, not a ton. You know, it's kind of tough because, especially if you're trying to make Varial boards for other people, they are a bit more expensive. So not everyone wants to go down that route, you know. Mm-hmm. But I've definitely taken a handful of boards over just to get even PU blanks glass at their glass shop with the vacuum bagging. Mm-hmm. Because yeah, I think the vacuum bagging thing definitely excites me. Yeah. I think there's definitely something there for sure.
Yeah. Like less resin in the weave, a stronger bond, perhaps.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if you compare it to other industries like aerospace or something, you know, where obviously they got to get everything really precise and technical. And that's how they're doing a lot of when they're laminating things. So it's like, okay, well, if, you know, these scientists are using that technology, then maybe we can make better boards with it.
Yeah. And how's the I'm very intrigued by Varial foam, and I've interviewed those guys before on this show, and I actually have a Varial blank that I need to get done at some point. How does that foam, do you think, compare to PU in your personal experience? Not necessarily shaping it, but also in surfing, because it feels like it would just be real. I don't know. It feels, when I hold the blank, I'm excited about it for some reason.
Yeah, I know. There's definitely, it's weird. It's like, it's dense, but in like the best way possible.
Yeah.
It just feels like all of the cells in the blank are just like where they need to be. You know, it feels really tight and yeah. It's
to me, to me, it feels like if I was to have a balsa blank, but it was foam. It feels like a balsa foam blank.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, what about EPS? No, yes, no, maybe so.
Man, I mean, I'm open to it. I think the hardest part with EPS is, especially over the last few years, like I couldn't find anyone to glass it. You know, I think, yeah, when the glass shops were just slammed over the years of COVID,
Yeah.
it's like everyone was so busy, like nobody was doing epoxy.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have the time to just do it myself. So I just haven't, unfortunately, it's a road I've always wanted to venture down, but just haven't really. I made a couple, but it just like, yeah, I haven't really put a ton of time into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, what do you think about EPS and epoxy?
Well, I think all foams are real personal, you know, like I'm a big believer in there's no one right way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I have problems with EPS. I've been writing PU for so long. There's some dampening quality. There's something to it.
Yeah.
And I always refer to a Skip Fry quote that I saw somewhere that's been attributed to him. And it's that a surfboard's at its best about 2 weeks before it delaminates. It's just completely like the dampening's perfect. It's like an old pair of slippers, like those rainbow sandals that have like your feet worn into them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So, but I'm also, and I want to get your insights on this. I don't know if you have, I've had 2 or 3 of Javier's XTR foam blanks, which is different than the EPS. EPS is expanded, XTR is extruded. And that stuff and his glassing schedule, those boards felt great. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with XTR at all. Yeah,
I remember seeing it around, but I'm not super familiar with it. Yeah, but I know like Fletcher Chenard and Patio Gundy guys are doing that stuff too. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems cool because it is interesting. That definitely seems to have a different feel to it when you go pick up like a Fletcher Chenard board compared to just regular EPS.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of that stuff, and I've really tried to like EPS, and I have a few EPS boards here, and I know there's a place for them, and I know guys love them, and more power to them. What about PU brands? There's obviously there's US, there's Arctic, there's Millennium. There's probably a few others maybe that I'm not thinking of. Do you think there's a difference? Do you notice a difference in any of the PU brands? Is there just one that you use and you haven't tried the others, or where are you with that?
Yeah, so I pretty much right now, I was using US pretty much exclusively for a long time. And then more recently, kind of the last maybe 6-8 months, I started to use more Millennium. I'd used some Millennium for certain things over the years. And then, just recently, I just kind of started to try to use it again.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of splitting it right now, half and half.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been happy with the results from Millennium for sure. I think, man, it's tough. It's, every board is even if it's the same, it's different.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to I feel like it's going to have to be years down the line before really noticing okay, these are the distinct differences, between the 2 poly brands.
Yeah. Yes. I'm interested in that because I often ask myself, does the end consumer need to know what the center of their surfboard is, like the brand it is, and the answer is, I don't know.
Yeah. That's a fair question. And probably it's to say, it's probably just comes down to the person, I'm sure if they're actually interested, then they'd ask. Yeah. But I think most people,
90% of us, we're not good enough to even know the difference anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, maybe a couple times, I don't know if I've ever had anyone to specifically ask for a certain type of blank, I want US, yeah.
Well, when somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, look, I need a certain stringer layup, I would imagine that all the brands are able to take care of you.
Yeah, between US for sure. I mean, US is incredible in that regard. It honestly, it blows me away how quickly and how good they are at that stuff. Millennium did a great job too. But yeah, you could just write up the craziest, stringer glue up, and then week later, just there it is. Like, yeah, they're the wood shop and everything they have there, their rock ring sections, like it's incredible.
Yeah.
So that definitely makes it easy on us, you know. Think about back in the day when, you know, you just had to buy the blanket string it yourself.
I know.
And it's like
without a saw and cut the thing and glue it up.
yeah.
High density foam, like doing trippy stuff with like wedge stringers and adding high density foam. Like you'd see boards like, for instance, the Bing Pipeliner. There were so many boards, UFOs. Yeah. There were so many boards back in the 60s that had these trippy high density foam wedges and stuff. Is that something you're interested in playing with?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at this rate, I feel like majority of the wedges and the, you know, is more so to get like that colored foam in there. You know, so I feel like more than not, I'm definitely, as far as if it's longboards and that sort of thing,
yeah,
I'll definitely mess more with the actual flex and with the actual wood in the board, and kind of leave the wedges and the high density foam more just up for the color design aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What number board are you on? Do you number your boards?
Yeah, oh man, what? Yeah, it's basically like hand shapes. It's about 1,800. I think it's just over 1,800 hand shapes, and then within that, I mean, just from bunch more scrubs from over the years. So yeah. Other work.
Did you start numbering right away, or were you like, oh shit, I've done 100 boards, I better start numbering these things?
yeah. I actually just I kept journals in the beginning, and yeah, they've gotten less and less detailed over the years.
Right.
But yeah.
But at the beginning, yeah, they were pretty much okay. Plug the planer in.
yeah.
Let's start simple. What's the most challenging board for you to shape?
Oh man, probably anything new, you know. Yeah, I think, man, it's, as far as what I'm doing, I mean nose riders are always a good challenge, I feel like, because there's so many, I feel like there's so many things changing the whole way.
Yeah, like
the rail the whole way is changing, the rocker, there's minute changes all the way through, then you're adding concave and whatever. So I think, you know, and if you throw extra stringers in there and everything, that definitely becomes a lot of work.
Yeah, and it would seem like a nose rider would be, would create a lot of anxiety. Like, okay, I've done everything I'm supposed to do here, but if this guy, you know, especially like a great surfer, you get a great surfer that's a great nose rider, and he's like, brings the board back, he's like, nope, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But I think that's that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. No. Yeah. I think that's something I think is important a lot of times, though. You know, and I think I wish more people were okay with doing, in a sense, is if, you know, if a shaper builds you a board or shapes you a board, you get it built, and it's not quite what you want. You know, I think it's important to bring it back and talk about it and do it again. You know, because I think so often it's like if people jump around here to there and not quite ever end up getting what they really want. I think it's important to really, if you put the time in with a shaper that you know, like and trust and everything, I think, you know, down the road, you're going to get to a point that you're going to be really happy with, versus if you just kept kind of bouncing around.
Yeah, it's an interesting problem, right? Because, I mean, we've all ordered boards from maybe guys that we don't really know that well. And the last thing we want to do is go, I don't really like this board, but I don't really want to tell the guy that I don't really
Yeah, for sure. I get that. Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a thing where you tell the guy up front, hey, like, if you commit to me for 3 boards, we're going to nail it. We might nail it on the first board. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll tell people that a lot. If, you know, if I can kind of sense that, you know, surfboards aren't cheap. And so sometimes, you know, people get like, okay, like they want a new board, but I can just kind of feel that they're a little like apprehensive. Yeah. And so when I get that, you know, I mean, I say it to everyone, but I'm like, you know, if you ride this thing a handful of times and you're like, this is not it, I'm like, bring it back. Like, we'll remake it, you know, we'll do it again. Cause like, Yeah, that's, we're not doing this to get rich. Like, I want I want everyone to be happy. So that's what it's about. Like, I want to do my best for everyone. So
Yeah, and from my own experience, I work with guys that I know and they demand that I go, nope, didn't do it, with this one's not it, or this one's kind of it, and this is why, or whatever. And then there are other guys where I'm like, I'm just gonna go back to my other guy. You know what I mean?
yeah, totally.
Oh, it's interesting. The lack of communication or the communication. Tell me about what's your comfort level with, well, what are your thoughts on this, the age-old debate nowadays, hand shape versus computer shape? Where do you stand on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I love hand shaping, but I'm open to it all. I just started using the machine kind of end of last year.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, it's definitely an important tool to have. I think my personal journey with it is like, I've never been opposed to it. It was just, I enjoyed hand shaping and I never got to a point where I really needed it. And then I would start working for Hobie and like they wanted their boards hand shaped. So I just kept hand shaping. Yeah. And then during COVID when it got just so busy, and then I'd be doing like 10 of the same model,
Yeah.
And that's where it hit me. I was just like what am I doing? At that point I really just felt like a machine. And it just kind of started to feel like my time wasn't being spent in the best way possible. And I'm like, by the 10th board, I'm like, you might be getting a little tired, might be a little, so I'm like, if I can just dial in the shape and take away that grunt work and then put that other time to things that are more valuable, then yeah. And it's been great. I've been super happy with it.
That's really great insight. And so are you a Shape 3D guy, or do you use Aku, or what's the software?
Yeah, I've been using Aku mainly because my computer is too old to get the new Shape 3D. So so I've been using Aku.
Oh, great. Do you have any interest in the WSL and the World Championship Tour and these guys riding these incredible sort of like, I don't know, for lack of a better phrase, Formula One type surfboards?
Yeah. I have all the respect in the world for it because I think, it's obviously like those guys are pushing the future and the boundaries of what surfing is. So I have the most respect for it. I've never paid super close attention to it. I'll kind of come and go with it, with my interest level. But I mean, it's like the boards that I'm focused on, it's mostly, longboards and alternative stuff. So I'm just kind of, my headspace is in a little different area. But when I come across it, I enjoy it, but it's not something I'm focused on, I guess.
And have you ever thought about the World Longboard Tour? And there's people that are riding your boards there?
Yeah, interesting. No one's riding my boards on the longboard tour. It'd be fun to work with someone to do that. But
what if somebody came to you and said, I want a 3-fin performance longboard to rip on? Would you vomit a little bit in your mouth, or would you?
No, not at all. I think it's just like kind of to a degree the EPS versus poly debate. People like what they like, Yeah. And I think that's if I can help them do what they want to do, then sure, that'd be great.
Yeah. And what does your quiver look like? What are you riding? How many boards do you have, and what do you sort of grab, and what's in your car?
Oh man, yeah, I've lately, I mean, been riding a lot of big boards, glider type stuff. I've been pretty focused on that the last few years.
How long? How long are your gliders?
Generally around 11.0.
Yeah.
I had a 10.6 I was riding for a bit, and then I've had some 12.0s. I felt like 11.0 just kind of seems like the right zone.
Yeah, it's funny. I was riding 11.0s for a while, and I've found I'm riding a 10.6, which sound is just, it's not as sexy as an 11.0, you're like, 11.0, But the 10.6 to me seems to be just the perfect number for whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a size where you still very much get the glider feeling, but it's, I mean, that's 6 inches. It sounds silly, but like it definitely makes the board way more maneuverable.
Yeah, and I'm also in that really weird conundrum where I'm like, I think I could actually nose ride this thing, like 11,
Yeah.
I'm not going up there. I don't even wax it up there, because you're supposed to just be cruising and trimming and stuff. But I
Yeah.
find on the 10.6, I'm like, wow, this board works so good. Maybe I should wax the nose and try to sneak up there. And of course, there's some belly up there that makes it really difficult. And
Yeah.
I just get into that weird headspace where I'm like, maybe I should have my guy build me a 10.6 glider that nose rides. And now all of a sudden, I'm off the reservation,
Yeah.
Is that doable, by the way? Is that something that we could do? Like, does that make sense to you, or does that take away from the whole thing?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. I think about it a lot, honestly. I think more so, I think a lot more of, okay, how can I incorporate glider elements into nose rider? So something that's more like 9.6, 10.0. But the long, like 10.6, 11.0 nose rider thing, it's tricky. I think, you can definitely do it, but there's something that seems to not, for whatever reason, it doesn't work quite right compared to say like a 9.6 or a 10.0. There's something that just kind of throws it off with that length. I find it just seems like with the rocker and overall of that length that you need, it's like once the board starts to kind of tip as you're going to the nose, it just doesn't work quite right. And yeah, it's tricky for sure. I think it could be done, but I think it would definitely take some work to get there.
Yeah, it's weird. As you mentioned that, I'm like, maybe we flatten out the tail so that when we do go up there, the tail stays engaged, because it feels like so much tippiness that once I get up there, maybe the tail pops out or the rail.
Totally. Yeah.
But then as soon as we flatten out the tail, I can't turn the board.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. That's tricky for sure, but it's exciting. What big board are you riding?
I've got one that Roy Sanchez made me that I actually bought straight off the rack. I bought it brand new off the rack. I just looked at it and went, oh, this thing looks really cool. I forget he's got a name for it. Oh, the Dreadnought.
Okay.
And man, it works great. And I've got an 11-foot that Travis Reynolds made, and I've got an Andrini, and they're all great. Probably the greatest glider I ever had was an Andrini that was just super buttery, but I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. Keeps me in the water, keeps you in the water.
Yeah, definitely. And I find it honestly, I feel like it helps my other surfing. I don't know if you felt the same way, but there's like the slowed down approach to it. I feel like you're really feeling and thinking about every movement. And I almost feel like once I get on a smaller board, then it's like everything's kind of smoothed out a little bit. Yeah,
no, I totally agree with that. And in fact, I feel like there's something about just riding a single fin in general that allows me to kind of pull back the reins a little bit and sit back on the fin and feel the board out from there, rather than kind of getting up on a board and getting out in front of it. It's going and getting chaotic. And so I'm a big fan. And I do believe it's an important part of the quiver. What about your fishes? I see fishes on your Instagram. They look like heels, right? Are you focusing on any quad fins at all?
Yeah, that's funny. That's like where I've been telling myself to go for a while. And so I have made some more double bump quads lately, double wing quads. And to me, that design really makes a lot of sense. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things where it's like I keep wanting to go there, and then if I just keep getting orders for just twin fishes, so it kind of pulls me back. But yeah.
How much do you weigh? Like, do you build your own board? Like, it feels like you should make yourself a double bump quad for yourself, and just I'm sure you're so busy. You're like, dude, I don't have time to make my own boards.
No, I definitely do. Yeah, that's it's funny. I have one that's like kind of halfway shaped right now that I'm making myself. Yeah. But I'm 6'2", about like 165.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about this electric surfboard acid test that Stab does?
Mm.
Have you ever been invited to participate in that?
I did. I think it might have been the first one with Dane Reynolds. I shaped the board for Trimcraft. Yeah, it was kind of funny because it was, they basically wanted to get a Pavel fish for the acid test,
Right.
for Dane to ride. They couldn't get a Pavel. So the next thing was, okay, we can get a Trimcraft because that's the Pavel fish model. And then I ended up shaping it.
Did you get
So,
credit?
yeah.
Did you lose credit?
Yeah. I remember like when it popped up on the screen, it said something like, like Trimcraft Pavel fish by Michael Arenal or something like that. Just like, okay, yeah. But no, I mean, it's kind of insane. I look at it now, I'm like, okay, I got the credit of shaping like this Pavel fish for this thing. So it's pretty cool. I think I'd rather do that than like, just shape my own thing.
I mean, if they call you right now, would you be psyched? If they're like, hey, let's get Michael to do a board for the electric surfboard test thing.
Yeah. I think it'd be super fun for sure. I think that's kind of something that's almost kind of pushes, you have the WSL in a sense pushing the performance level of surfing, and then these guys are almost kind of pushing the alternative side of surfing. So super cool.
Well, relative to some of the designs that you're making, is there anybody that you're like, wow, that guy, there's one guy that I see his stuff and I'm like, whoo, that thing's tight. Or maybe there isn't. Man. I don't mean to put on the spot. Maybe you're just so focused that there's nobody out there that's,
No, yeah. I mean, I feel, it's kind of hard. I feel like these days I'm pretty much focused on like the guys around me that I hang with, my friends and stuff, but yeah, I'm kind of.
The reason I'll tell you what, there's a guy that blows, that I look at his stuff and I'm intrigued. And mostly because I can't ride a 50-50 rail longboard. I'd rather have a little bit of an edge in it, And these are 50-50 rail boards, these longboards I'm talking about, but he's done something to it that he swears that I'll be able to do a bottom turn. You know what I mean? Instead of just bogging. And it's Michael Takayama's longboards that his son Kai rides them. And they look intriguing. I've never ridden them, but
yeah, no, that would definitely be a guy for sure. That's, I mean, I think he's piqued the interest of a lot of people. You see those guys riding those boards and they're just, it really is kind of pushing that level and that envelope of longboarding in a sense where like, okay, they're still getting these insane nose rides, but they're turning them as well. So I think that's kind of the next, I think he's kind of forefronting that next frontier.
Yeah.
I just kind of feel like, and that's kind of what I was talking about earlier with like incorporating glider aspects of boards and with nose riders. Because I kind of feel like it's getting to the point where nose riders have come back and they've been popular. But I think there's going to get to a point where people want to start to do other things. Yeah. And I think that's kind of like where Michael's going with those boards is, okay, we're still nose riding, but we're kind of kicking it up a notch in a sense. Yeah.
And I have some Wayne Riches that are like that, where I go to Wayne, I go, he knows me really well. We're almost best friends. And he knows that I do not want a 50-50 railed tail. I need an edge back there because I just need to do a bottom turn. Like without doing a bottom turn, I got nothing. And I need to project out of a turn. And he's made me some boards that have a little magic in them, that have a little, to do a bottom turn. And I do, CJ Nelson comes to mind. There's a lot of guys that are kind of in this like pig mode where they're like, look, I just kind of want to like sit back on the fin and kind of do this. And then I'll drive into a turn and walk up to the nose.
Right. Yeah. Wayne's boards are insane. It's so cool. And it's nice because you like, I feel like whenever I see a board of his, it's always different, obviously he has his models he does, but it's like, he has such a wide range.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And then, man, like I feel like it was a little bit ago now, but I remember like seeing Troy Mothershead on that RingCon. He's just like riding this board so well. And he popped out and he's like on a Wayne Rich. It's like, dang, like a good combo right there. Troy on a Wayne.
That is a good combo.
Yeah.
That's a good combo for sure. Yeah. Well, look, I know that Bing Copeland's excited to have what he described to me as new, exciting, talented shapers. And he's selected you to be one of the 8 shapers in the Shape Off coming up here in October at the BoardRoom show. Do you have any idea what board you're going to be shaping it? There's 3 rounds and 3 different boards. If you get through the rounds, you shape a different board. But round 1,
Yeah.
have you given it any thought, or you're just haven't even gone there yet?
No, I've definitely given it thought. I've been trying to figure it out, talking with friends, and like my buddy Chris Carlo at Hobie.
Yeah.
He's such a Chris. Like he's a history nerd, especially when it comes to surfing. So I've been talking with him to try to get his like thoughts on what it could be, and we've run through it, and yeah, it's tough because we're trying to, like, the thing that I'm thinking about is there's obviously like certain models that it for sure, obviously, I feel like I could pick out a few and it's probably going to be in there.
Yeah.
But then there's ones that have really like a lot of like wood and stringers. And I'm like, okay, is US going to supply all those blanks for like 6 blanks for people, or 8 blanks, or whatever it is?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe they'll do that one for the final. They just need 2. So I'm trying to like try to figure that out. Yeah.
Oh, we've got you right where we want you, Michael. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, but man, it's super cool. It's like it's really it's been super enjoyable. I mean, I'm really excited. I'm super honored, super excited to be there, because I think it's definitely just pushing and shaping in a different way and making my brain work in a different way. And it's super fun to think about.
Yeah, I mean, Bing offers so much for this competition, because you can open the Bing book, there's a book that out there on Bing, and look at all the models, and it's ridiculous. Like there's just so many models, especially in the transition era, like the Maui foil and blah, blah, blah. There's just a million of them. And then before that, of course, you've got a David Nuuva nose rider, you've got the Bing pipeliner, you've got there's the David Nuuva lightweight, and then you go. I mean, it's crazy how many designs that are available to us to choose, and he's of course picking them, and it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah.
What do you know about Thomas Beckson? Thomas Surfboards, he's going to be competing against you in Australia.
Yeah. I mean, there's another guy who's talking about kind of pushing things. I mean, I've never met Thomas, I don't think. But I think that was a really, really exciting name to hear who's going to be there. Yeah, I'm really curious to see him there and see what he does. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, we're excited too. And there's some other guys like Wayne Rich, of course, is in the competition. Roger Dane Purley from down here, who is from Santa Cruz. He's making some really unique longboards.
Yeah.
The fins he's using, or the positioning of them, are kind of weird.
Yeah. Those things are really, really intriguing. Is it? Yeah, I mean, they're so wild looking, but then you see somebody surfing, like, oh, they're working. So.
And Dane surfs incredible on him. He's an incredible surfer. And then there's Josh Peterson, who won the Shape Off on the East Coast. Do you know Josh?
I know Joshua. That's gonna be super cool. Josh, I mean, I'm definitely, I mean, I'm nervous for everyone, to go. Everyone is such an incredible shaper there, but Josh is like, he's a really good board builder, really dialed. So
he's like you. He's a talented young man. That's, I mean, I know you're not young, but relative to my age.
No, thanks, Scott.
And then Hank Warner's built everything. That guy has, he's just a legend.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's
man,
gonna be fun.
That's a good lineup. It's
a gnarly lineup.
So fun.
Yeah. And Bing chose him, and the reason is because he only chose people that he knows can, like, there's people that can make a shortboard and there's people that can make a longboard, but are there people that can do it all? And that's where I believe his thinking was when he chose the eight shapers. So
Mm-hmm.
that'd be interesting. Also, by the way, there's a best in show thing that we do. Well, you know, you won it
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah,
Best
with
in Show
Hobie.
is yeah, you did with Hobie, right?
Mm.
So this year, best in show is the Bonzer. So the Bonzer brothers, Malcolm and Duncan, are going to be there to judge best in show this year. And they're just
Cool.
asking everyone to build a Bonzer. So anyone listening that's a board builder, anyone around the world is allowed to enter this thing, and it's free to enter. And there's money. There's $1,000 for first place, and that's going to be kind of fun too. A totally separate deal than the Bing thing, but the best in show.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm hoping that you'll build a board for that as well.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I would love to do that. Is it because I feel like maybe not last year, but I can't remember. Is there two best in shows? There's like an alternative one, or how does that?
Yeah, sometimes there's two categories. This year we just have one simple category.
Okay.
I think Malcolm and Duncan are just asking you to make something's got to have a double barrel bottom down there by the tail. It's got to have 3 or 5 fins, and that's the only.
Okay, so there's a criteria of what it needs to contain.
Yeah, Bonzer's basically it. If you know what a Bonzer is, then you're in business.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, making something totally out of the box, but still in the realm. But
exactly, we want you to be creative. You know. For sure.
Okay.
Well, look, Michael, we've said a lot. We had a great talk. I appreciate you being here this morning. I know you're busy, but like I said, we're excited to have you in the BoardRoom show.
Thank you.
Should be good.
Yeah. Thank you so much for chatting. It was great to talk with you and catch up on all this. It was fun.
Yeah, buddy. Well, look, you know how to get a hold of me, and we'll chat soon. Thanks again, bud.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks, Scott.